gonna call and see if I can get the truck there. Where is it? Up at my place. Tie rod is very narrow, and I'm pushing 1,500 to 2,000 pound firewood
We
behind
need to have Brandon back so we have a quorum.
So what?
Yeah, he's in the way. Oh, there he is.
Tie rod. We're there.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Lynn.
Okay. So it's 4:02. We're going to call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Is there any comments or feedback on that? Or does somebody want to make a motion to approve both the January and February?
Well, the only one I have is on the January one on page 5 of 5. It said, Belcher said every park should have a kiosk and a map with trail marked out. I still go along with that. It says get some cobblestones is found in Portland near the kiosk. What I was saying is that, to my understanding, is Portland has mounds of these kiosks, of these stones. And if we decide to build a kiosk at the Botanical Garden, since that's where cobblestones were made, I'd like to see the kiosks, feature cobblestones.
Yeah, that change, okay, Sherry. Aaron. Okay, so that was in the January minutes.
That's what you told me. Yes, yes, it wasn't last time, I know that.
Okay. So we will bring that up again next month. To approve the January minutes with the changes that were suggested. Next is a
Does it make sense? Would it make sense for us to approve, assuming those updates are made so that we're not approving 3 months later?
That's a good idea, Carmen.
So I would make a motion that we approve the January minutes with the updates that Jerry suggested and approve the February minutes as is.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the changes for January and the February minutes. Pardon?
You have to vote on it.
Is there any objections?
Lynn's new to the job.
Yeah,
we all hear
it's
them.
been a while since I did. Okay, any objections at all or further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
none. So the minutes have been approved. Next is staff report.
I'm Shauna Duggan. I'm the Parks and Recreation Manager. So we've been super busy, Erin and I. In the last 30 days, we've had 390 program registrations, and those are including our free programming that we're doing. This is for recreation. So we have the new community center over at 2625 Gable Road open for activities, and we have a lot of user groups that are using our facilities for meetings. We had Art Guild there today. We have the Columbia County Health Coalition meets there on Thursday. So just lots of different things going on there. And then we're still using our recreation center over on Old Portland Road for things like dance classes. We have a boot camp class there tonight. So between both locations, we've been really busy and offering different programming. Adult softball, I had told you guys at a previous meeting that we have absorbed the Adult Softball League. That will start in June. And so we're getting the coaches and teams formed for that. So that's exciting because if any of you guys follow any parks and recreation in the state or anywhere, sports is a really driving factor for funding parks and recreation. And so it's nice to have it under our umbrella because then we're able to also look at other sports opportunities. We have been looking at different things around the parks that we can accomplish that aren't super big tasks, but things that would make a big difference. And one of those is we poured concrete in the dugouts over at Campbell Park. And so we got a really good response from the softball teams that they no longer have to put their duffel bags in the muddy gravel there. So, and we've been looking for other opportunities that we can do to help maintain and fix up some things that don't require a lot of staff or funding right now. We tomorrow have a Parks Utility 1 starting. So Julian Zirkle is his name, and he is a new staff member on the Parks maintenance crew. He used to work for Columbia County through Cardinal Services, so it's exciting to have somebody who kind of knows what's already going on in the county, and he's from St. Helens. So if you see him out and about, be sure to welcome him, and we'll post something on Facebook with his picture and stuff, so you'll be able to recognize him. The last 2 weeks have had work parties in Godfrey Park. So we've been trying to conquer the ivy over on the tree, and I know Howard was a big force with that. So thank you, Howard. And so has Scappoose Bay Watershed with Emily, and some other folks showed up. It seems like, and I know Dana was there too, and a few others. And I saw pictures of kids participating, and I'd really like to encourage us to start forming more work parties at our neighborhood parks. I know we have work parties that already happen at a lot of the parks, and they're established work parties, but I think it would be really great if we could start sprinkling in at our other parks as well, give the community some pride, and also seeing what goes on there, and also some ways that they can help us maintain them. Before the meeting, Jerry had a question about grants and how we look at those and such. And I just want to let you know that that is something that is on my job description. And Matt works a lot with me with that, and so does Jenny. So we're always looking for grants to fund different projects. There's a few factors that go into it. Some grants look great on paper, but when you look at the management to it compared to what you're getting, sometimes it's not feasible because we don't have a full-time grant manager. So if you ever have questions about why we're not applying for a grant or why we are, my door is always open to talk about that. But I'm always looking for different grant opportunities. If you find any, feel free to forward them over as well. And if you find it is a good fit for what we're looking for, we'll definitely apply for it. So I think that's it for us. We've just been super busy getting ready for spring. That's when the park maintenance staff really ramps up. We're excited to have 3 staff. We haven't had 3 staff since July of last year. So we've been doing everything they've been doing with 2 staff, and they've done a phenomenal job. Having that 3rd person is really going to make a big difference, especially when we get into our busy mowing season and maintaining the sports leagues and stuff. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Shauna. Any questions from anybody else or Jerry?
Hey, Shauna, as far as planning other work parties for other parks, I mean, you guys are out in all the different parks. I probably more frequently than all of us are in all of them. So I feel like you guys, the staff may have a better idea of some focus areas that you guys would really like volunteers to work on. Would that be possible to get maybe a list of some of your guys' priorities, and then we could start to plan some work parties to tackle those?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Carmen. We are doing a parks field trip next week with staff going around to looking at that stuff. So once we get done with that, I'll create a list and send it on. Thank you for that suggestion.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Jerry?
Okay, after Carmen made that, now I have another comment.
Okay.
The other comment. I know that, Howie does Knobhill Park, and Carmen and I have been doing St. Helens Botanical Garden. Maybe we could, and Lynn has been doing a lot of work down at Dalton Lake. So those are kind of the areas that, that the 3 of us have taken, or the 4 of us, sorry, Carmen, have taken interest in. Maybe we could see if some of the other commission would be interested, because right now I'm speaking for myself, not Carmen. I'm not real interested in trying to organize another work party for another park, but maybe someone else on the commission would be. That's just something to maybe bring up at discussion sometime when we got more people here.
I think that's a great suggestion. And the other part of this that I didn't think of is we do have an agreement with Scappoose Bay Watershed to work on McCormick Park and Godfrey. So there will be work parties that they are scheduling for those 2. So that will take a little bit of that load off of staff and also volunteers as well. But I think that's a great suggestion. I know Lynn printed earlier a list of where everyone's parks are. And so it'd be great maybe if we can look at those and see if there's anybody that wants to take ownership to a work party. I think having a work party once a year in each park would be really great to have, because I think it will bring in other folks besides just the people we normally see. I think people who are walking through the neighborhood and see something going on might join. And I would like to also get some signage that we can put out, like an A-frame sign, like work party going on, come join us or something, so people are curious about what's happening. So
Yeah, I think it would be good for other commissioners too, to see the other parks and be working on them as well. So get to know them a little bit better.
I know I've worked at Dalton Lake, but I've never gone Howard. Just hasn't worked out for me to go there. The other comment I was going to make, Sean, was I was playing pickleball yesterday, and there was this couple that just moved to St. Helens 2 or 3 months ago, Jay and Jeanette, and they said, "Oh, there's pickleball courts at Campbell Park, but there's no nets." And I said, "Yeah, you have to check them out from Parks and Rec." So if it's on the weekend, people will need to go on Friday to check the nets out.
yeah, we'll have a system in place. We haven't, because it hasn't been that nice out yet. We're hoping by the beginning of April, we'll have a system in place that people can check out the nets and stuff. But yes, they would come on a Friday, check them out, and then bring it back on Monday.
So how many nets do you have?
We have some ordered, so we'll have a total of 4.
Okay.
Because would it be possible to have a permanent net type of thing, like tennis nets are permanent? Would it be possible to look at putting a permanent net in there by chance?
So the thing with pickleball nets is they're a little bit less permanent than, say, a tennis net, is what I was told. And we're having a lot of vandalism problems over at McCormick, with even around the basketball hoop, the rubber areas around the hoop has been ripped off. We've had problems in the bathroom. So we were just a little worried about putting something that somebody could remove from the court over there. And that, yeah, so we can definitely explore those options and see what that looks
I
like.
agree. I totally agree
Yeah.
with that. Yeah, so I just, for the record, I think that's important for people to know why.
Yeah,
And they're pretty portable, right? Like it's a
Yes.
pretty small bag that contains.
yeah, and a lot of people have their own, I mean, that I've seen go over there, they have their pickleball nets that they go over. Yeah, we can definitely look at other options. We just have had a really hard time with Campbell Park lately.
How many do you have?
4.
Just one?
What was that? 4. You're welcome.
Is there a way to build a bulletproof box that would have a combination so that people try like just with one in there for a weekend or see if it survives or not?
Yeah, so we're still doing stuff to the area over there. We still need to put in benches and signs. And so that is something that I've looked at, is equipment box that people, but then the part of that is who gets the combo, have to do changes. So just figuring out what that looks like, so.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I'm not sure it would work for us, but in Longview, there's a park called Van Pool, it's called. And in the summertime, people play pickleball there all the time. And I asked the people, what do they do about nets there? Because I was just kind of curious because of what we do here. And what they do there is, like Howie says, they have a box. And it has a combination, but the combination they had was the same all last year. Apparently it worked out. But you might want to have some. So if someone calls up that really wants to use it, you get their name and number. Anyway, that's what they do up there.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of places have had that, because I've been researching different ways to check out equipment, because we've had other asks for like having basketballs available or volleyballs or things like that, and what that looks like. There is a cost associated to replacing that equipment, such, so seeing what the risk is versus what we're providing.
The trouble with pickleball, if people want to play it, I mean, basketball, a lot of people own their own basketball or own soccer ball. But when it comes to pickleball, you can't play pickleball without a net. And most people don't own a net, but like you say, maybe if people plan on playing there all the time. I don't. I can see people buying their own net too.
Yeah, and they're not that I know the one that we got from like Dick's Sporting Goods, I think it was like $70 for the whole kit type of thing. So they're not super but I can see, and we are going to offer some clinics on the weekends where we'll have that set up for people. So we do have some plans to make it more accessible for folks as well, but we just have to figure out what that looks like. in terms of staffing and yeah, we have a combo thing, what that looks like, and they're pretty expensive to get ones that are vandalize proof, if there is a such thing. Because it seems like they can really get into whatever they feel like over McCormick, so, or not McCormick, Campbell is our right now.
I mean, you mentioned that you're gonna have maybe clinics. There's a guy named Steve, I can't remember his last name now, whose father actually invented pickleball that lives in St. Helens now. Do you know the guy?
I have heard of them, yeah.
And I know this weekend he was down in Clackamas where they're opening up a total pickleball clinic. But he's got out 2 years ago before the pandemic, when we used to play pickleball out at the athletic club, Civic Athletic Club. He came out and three times, and just gave us free lessons, you know. But he's a real, I mean, he gives lessons to, like, you know, professional athletes, people that want to learn. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. So,
Well, anybody that you know that is connections like that for any kind of activity, please send it my way because we'd love to make that.
yeah, I'll give his
connection.
last name. I got his phone number.
That would be great.
I'll get his last name. I always call him Steve Pickleball, but that's not his name. It's like,
Thanks, Jerry.
Anything else?
not a,
Okay,
No,
next is
uh,
topics from the floor. I see Patrick up there. Now and Emily. Patrick?
Hi, how are you? I'm trying to get some schoolwork done and I'm being very frustrated by my password not working on my account for something. So hi, so I just wanted to, as you're talking about work parties, I was talking with Lynn yesterday. I would like to be sponsoring a work party at Dalton Lake up on the bluff on April 23rd to coincide with the Solve statewide spring cleanup. So I would like to do that Saturday, April 23rd from 9 to 12. And just wanted to make sure that I let you know and got a heads approval or a go ahead for that.
That's great.
Thank you. And also at Dalton, I am now teaching, I'm teaching 4th grade here at Columbia City. And I'm hoping after spring break to have a couple of walking field trips with my 4th grade class to Dalton Lake. It's only about a 15-minute walk. So I will work with, make sure I work with Lynn, especially as I know Crest is going to be beginning its work and that type of thing. But I'll be sure to keep Lynn, and I hope through that with the Parks Commission on any kind of stuff that's going on. My hope is that we can get Columbia City School involved and engaged in activities at Dalton Park on a regular basis. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I'll still be here next year. I'm only on a temporary contract, and I just got my my pink slip, which I was expecting, but I'm hoping that I'll be back next year in the years to come. So I just wanted to give a heads up on that with Dalton, that I'm hoping to make a connection with the students here at Columbia City. And the third thing is I just would like to really emphasize to encourage the fight with invasives. It seems to me that there are a few places where work parties are not going to address the issue, and that is dealing with a couple of species. One, and I think particularly at McCormick Park on the west side of Milton Creek, so where the walking trails are there, where the disc golf course is. The Scotch broom that is just running rampant over the last couple of years. I've gone in on occasion and cut down patches and piled it up for pickup, but it's just really needs to be addressed, I think, more than work, volunteer work parties. And the second, I think, is also because it can be a crazy plant, is the English holly. There's a lot of English holly, and I don't think that that is something that is just good for, you know, volunteers to go in and cut or whatever, because the nature of the holly then is that cutting can spur growth. So it would require some kind of probably some kind of chemical treatment as well after the cutting. So I would just advocate that that the Parks and Recreation Commission, as you are going ahead and I guess Shauna, with as you talking with you know, Public Works and what can and cannot be done with the parks, that is one park and a couple of species that I really do think are going to require some kind of effort that would require city staff or contracting out. If you're looking for grants, I encourage you to look for grants to help take care of some of these invasives, because I think they're beyond what volunteer work parties can take care of. But once they are taken care of, then maybe volunteer work parties can help to keep the situation down. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I got one other one to say with you there, Patrick, is the other major one that's coming into our parks heavily is the red shining geranium.
Yeah.
And there just isn't really any good ideas on how to control that. And I've heard that it even puts stuff into the soil so other things don't want to grow. And that's like one of our newest marching forwards and bases throughout the community right now. It's the red shining.
Along with the herb Robert also is the stink. What is it? Yeah, that stink. Yeah. So it's both of them. They're taking over a lot of those areas. You're right, Howard. So thanks.
I do see Emily has her hand up, but one thing I did want to say is we do have an agreement with Scappoose Bay Watershed that we are going to be working through some of those things that you were talking about, Patrick, with staff and with Emily. So I'll let her talk.
Okay, I look like I'm unmuted. So I did want to speak up and address the issues that were raised. So one of the things that we have agreed to partner with the city is to help them manage some of the weeds that are currently within the 2 parks that have direct access to the watershed. But the good thing about that, our partnership, is that we can help with resources as well. For example, the Oregon Department of Agriculture does offer grant funding to do invasive weed control management. So there are certainly opportunities. The current funding cycle ends on Tuesday, so I don't know if we have time to throw something together, but one of the things that the SBWC is trying to do is we're trying to put an application to develop a weed management program for our projects, and we can certainly look at expanding that into other areas that have previously not been areas we would consider to survey. For example, most of our project sites are going to be ones that we have grant cycles open for right now, such as our Nob Hill Nature Park and some of our IGA agreements. But if we know, for example, that the city of Scappoose or the city of St. Helens is willing to support us, potentially through the IGA, I think we could consider looking and doing a weed survey to say, where are these weeds and how many acres do we have? Because if we have enough acres, we could look at cost efficiency for hiring a contractor to do these treatments versus having a handful of volunteers going in and trying to tackle a problem that's bigger than the people themselves. And of course, I would not be doing my duty as nursery manager if I wasn't saying that in April, we are planning to do our native plant sales. So please keep your shopping lists open. And we just published our plant availability list on the website. So you can check out and see what plants we have available or not. Sizes and quantities are something you're gonna have to email me for. How do I lower this thing?
Any other comments? Going on to the counselor's report.
Why, Lynn?
Hi,
You want me up there for my report?
wherever you,
I just came in off the farm and sorry I was minutes late. Apologize to everyone. So, and thank you for the wonderful updates on the nature nature plant, especially with invasive species. I think that's very essential as we move forward with our nature parks, because that's usually the first thing that people notice in a nature park is something, if they're looking for something that isn't right, well, that's going to be the first thing, as well as trash and that kind of thing. And that we have got licked. I mean, the issues of what Dalton Lake was 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and what the nature park was 10 years ago is like night and day, which Howie can totally attest to. And Howard, so thank you for keeping us updated on that. And I really appreciate Pat's awarenesses and his report, as well as Emily. Very insightful. I've got one thing that is kind of a procedural kind of issue, and that's with the, maybe you can help me out a little bit on this as well, but when we go through the applications of the new Parks Commissioner applications, that the process, as I recall it in the last phase, I know that quite a few years ago, it was a type of thing where the Parks Commission would meet and the Parks Commissioner, that's before my name became a liaison and I oversaw the Parks Commission. It was up to myself and the Parks Commission to appoint a new commissioner. So that's how it was. And we interviewed in this room, and the day that they interviewed, they went out in a alcove and came back in and said, well, you got it, or whatever. That's the way it was done. So update me on what you think, how we think, what you think we should go through, what process we should go through to appoint, for the council to appoint a new Parks Commissioner. Any ideas?
sure.
Normal procedures, they make a recommendation to council and the council does the actual appointing.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, but any ideas on how that's going to be done? Will you do you want to interview the candidates in your own process that way? Okay.
I would like to.
And then what I would appreciate would be a ranking to the council, to myself, and I believe that in the last round, it was the mayor and myself who did the interviewing for the two candidates, or there was possibly three, and then one what didn't show up for those candidates that showed up, and then we appointed. Okay, is everyone okay with that process?
So would we still have input from the board or from the Parks Commission, or you guys?
Yeah, I would say that when you would recommend 1, 2, and 3 in that order.
Okay.
Of who should be first, who should be second, who should be third, that kind of thing.
Well, like last time when we voted, I know the vote was 5-1, 6-1, 3-1, whatever. I mean, we could report that.
Exactly. However you want to do it, just as long as.
Or if there's more, one suggestion too is if there's more than, let's say there's 4 candidates, we could rank them like they do in some elections, everyone goes their first choice, second choice, third.
That's
fourth,
what I
whatever,
would, that's what we
and-
would
and-
prefer.
And give them a number, and then when you're through, add that up, and that goes to the mayor and the council, and then they can make a decision.
And so my question to you folks is, what kind of questions will you be asking? Will it be the standard kind of questions that we would be asking? How will you go about doing that? Because the city has a standard for interviews that we go by in terms of, introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, what's your experience, those kinds of things. Would you like that standard to go by? Because the staff has that standard, if you would like to follow it. If you'd like to follow it and then deviate from it, that would be good. But I think that the council should know when we go through ours, what you have asked and how you've ranked people. Okay?
Well, then I'd make a recommendation or a motion.
Can I ask a question before we do the motion?
Carmen, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there something that came up with the last recommendation that we had where that didn't work out well? Like, is there something broken with our process that we're trying to fix, or just kind of curious where this is spouting from? And I'm also curious if after we do interviews on the Parks Commission, did you say that you and the mayor also followed up and did interviews?
Yes, the council
Okay.
does. The council does interviews and appoints.
Okay, for the commission members.
That's correct.
Okay, I didn't
And
realize
so
that.
I just wanted to make
level was
certain,
happening.
that that everything would be streamlined, Carmen, so that when the 2 or 3 candidates or 4 candidates come to the council, that we know what questions you've asked and how they've scored, so that that we understand better of how to appoint.
Okay, thank you.
Did you see any flaws last time?
I mean, we've just always done, it's the worst answer ever, but we've just always done what we've always done. And I don't know. I mean, we just have our typical questions that we ask and then do a vote after. It's usually not super formal. It's usually a pretty relaxed conversational type process.
I can't recall. Did we go along with your recommendation?
Yes.
Yep, Dana's here and Brandon's here. Those were our last 2, I believe.
So, Doug, I have a question. Does the mayor have veto power over, so let's say the vote is 6-1 or 7-2 or 6-0. Does the mayor have veto power? I mean, you guys make the decision, but is it made by the whole council, or does the mayor say, does he have veto over what we recommend?
The mayor and I are liaisons to Parks and Public Works.
So just the 2 of you.
It's the 2 of us that met and interviewed.
So what if you guys disagree?
We agree.
Okay.
We find a way to agree.
Okay, so you reached, okay. Well, what I was going to mention earlier was, I'm with Carmen. The methods we've used now is good, but I make a motion that we use the formal interview process that the city has with individual follow-up questions, so Carmen, we can still keep asking the questions we do. And I don't know how to actually word this second one because I'm not real familiar with it, but then when we vote, we rate the candidates. And someone's going to have to help me on how we do that. So if there's 4 of them, do you give the top one 4 points, the second one 3 points, 2 points, 1
I can
point?
tell you how the city does it. Okay, how we do it when we interview department heads or go through interview process. We have a sheet and we score each question from like 1 to 10 or whatever. And then those are added up on each question. And you add up the total for that person on all of their 10 questions, and then possibly a subjective question as well. What was your overall opinion of their appearance and their enthusiasm and that kind of thing, some kind of subjective opinion of just, oh, they're really outgoing and they're whatever, which is not an objective kind of question. Does that make sense? I mean, you're making a subjective
I think a lot of these
analysis.
things are made subjectively.
Okay, so,
No offense.
and that could be worth, like 20 points where all the others are worth 5 each or whatever.
So that is part of the city's formal process.
Exactly, but let me finish. Okay, so with those scores added up, then we take those scores and say, okay, this person was first place, they had 120 points. This person was second, they had 115. This was third with 85, not very strong, and fourth with 79. So it kind of tells us who the two top strong candidates are as we go through our interview process, and we'll invite all those who interviewed with you into the council interview as well.
Yeah, I say let's use that system, with us being able to ask individual questions, the subjective part,
Yes.
where we ask
I think
that.
that's important.
But since I've been here, I think we've had Brandon and Dana and you, Lynn, that we voted on. And, there's never even been an issue, on,
All darn good choices. Exactly.
but there could be in the future.
Okay, so that's it with the procedure for, and the policy for picking new parks commissioners. And so the interviews will go to you. Kathy Payne has the application. She'll get them to you folks, and we'll pick out a date where everyone, you have an opportunity to interview as soon as possible, and then the council as soon as possible will follow up. Okay, doke?
How many candidates do we have right now for?
One so far. One so far, and it closes tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
It's the guy you interviewed in December.
Do I need to make that motion again?
Yeah.
Go ahead and make that again, and then we'll get a second.
Sorry, can I ask another question before you make a motion? My only concern with having like a huge long list of questions that we have to score on is if the interviews are still going to happen during the commission meeting. My worry is that we're going to have the interview, ask all of those questions, then we're all going to have to take time to score however many, like 10, without seeing the actual process for employees. For city employees, it's hard to say like how long that process could take for each. So my concern is doing that during a commission meeting might become a little bit problematic. And then the other thing that I just want to state is that this is a volunteer position. And so I think keeping that in mind as we're doing the interview process and not making it overly complex so that it will kind of cause people to think twice about applying. I think we need to keep that in mind, that these aren't employees we aren't employees who are getting paid by the city. It's a volunteer position, and we want to make it as open and accessible for people to get on a commission as possible. And that's all I've got. Thanks.
Good question, Carmen. And I think one of the issues is that when we have gone through the interviews, and I'll take the last one that we did, and that was the library director. And each candidate, there were 3 candidates in the last round. It narrowed down to 3. And each candidate had finished their 10 questions, 10 or 12, I believe it was 12 questions within a half hour. So that's how long it takes for each candidate. I could see that being narrowed down to 15 minutes, 12 or 15 minutes, so that each person is allocated like 2 minutes maximum on their answer, maybe a minute and a half on each answer. And I think that way you can you can shave it down to how many people you are interviewing. So if you only have one, there wouldn't be any need to do that. But if you had 4 candidates or 6 candidates, it would have to be narrowed down some way like that. That would just be up to you guys to do that. So what's important is for the council to know what questions were asked and what the score was. If you ask only 4 questions, well, that could be it. But I think the interview process is important. Would you suggest having another day to do this? Is that kind of what you're suggesting?
I would suggest we do it not during a commission meeting unless it needs to be public record, because I don't think it's super fun to be interviewed on a public record meeting when you're getting interviewed and then the next candidate is getting interviewed right after. I don't know. I'll defer to Dana and Brandon because they went through it more recently, but to me, it's not the ideal situation. And then if we're going through a more formal process, I think the time that it takes would eat up too much of our commission meetings.
So with that being said, would you say an executive committee could do if it calls for another extra meeting and not everyone could be at that meeting on the Parks Commission, that you pick an executive committee and plus any others who would like to be involved?
Yeah,
Would you?
I guess that would be my
like
vote.
that?
Yeah, I'd be open to that.
Yeah.
I kind of second what Carmen mentioned, is that I haven't been involved with this too long, and I've only been through the process with myself and with Dana, but I didn't see an issue with it. I kind of liked the informality and just being able to talk about my favorite park and what I wanted to contribute. And like Carmen mentioned, we are volunteers, and I think if this gets too formal, it might persuade some people to maybe not go through the whole process if it's going to be too cumbersome.
I think there's pros and cons to both of these ideas, but I like the informality of doing that. And I think we have enough commissioners here where we can ask questions where the applications seem to be lacking. You don't have information for that. I know I've seen some of them. And so I want to hone into those questions, so I know a little bit more about their experience and why they want to be on the commission.
Several comments here. One, when I was interviewed for the commission, it was done by, I know Jacob, and I think there might have been another person there. We made it like McDonald's and sit down there. It was really different. One thing I do like about having formal questions like what Doug's talking about is that we asked at least everyone initially the same questions, because when we interview one person, we might ask 6 or 7 questions to for some reason, and another person we might only ask 2 questions to. So I kind of like the idea that we have a standard set of, I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill here, but I still think it's if we're going to do this, I think it is nice to ask everyone the same questions. I kind of agree with Carmen, and I know Brandon said it doesn't bother him, and I don't think it would bother me, but I never really thought of the idea of people being interviewed in public. And I think Carmen has a legitimate idea on that maybe a subcommittee of 2 or 3 people, do the interviewing. And those are my comments, that I think that maybe if we didn't do it here, it might be better, maybe not. And I do like the idea of having a set of questions we all ask, and then at the end, we can do the subjective questions that we could grade also.
I remember when I was interviewed, I was surprised that I was going to be interviewed at that time, and I wasn't going to a different room or something. But it turned out fine, because it was 3 questions that different people asked. So I could elaborate if I wanted to on one question more than the other, if I had more information. So it's, I still like the informality of it. And you are going on a city commission. So I have no problem with that being online. But everybody's a little different, so that might bother some people. But I think if we come with some set questions that we're going to be asking from now on, then it wouldn't be so difficult to say who's going to ask what question and who's going to.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make that motion again. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. So my motion is that we use a set number of questions. It's the same for everyone. So everyone gets asked the same question with individual questions at the end. And we rate those via the city standard that they're using. And then if there's more than one candidate, then we rate them. If there's two, then your first candidate gets 2 points and your second one gets 1 point. If there's three, it's 3, 2, 1. If it's four, I don't know how to word this. I'm sure there's a generic way of doing this. 4, 3, 2. But I kind of like the idea that maybe we still do it here. I know that, as Carmen said, it might take a little bit more time, but normally we don't have that many people. So that's my recommendation. That's my motion.
I'll wait till somebody seconds it.
Any second? Anybody would like to second that motion?
I will.
Thank you.
So,
Make a clarifying comment, I apologize.
yeah, okay, I love you too.
I want to be very clear that when you're interviewing somebody, you cannot ask each person different questions. So you can ask a question that is subjective, what's your favorite park? But you can't ask somebody, what do you like about Godfrey Park? And then what do you think about Great Cliffs Park? Or you can't ask different questions, especially if you're going to be rating them.
Absolutely correct.
No, we haven't done that, I don't think.
Well, then do we need always to come up with a list of what our specific questions should be as far as parks? Because it could be different than somebody hiring somebody to be a field supervisor or whatever. There's different questions that we need to be answered if we're limited by the number of questions that we can ask.
I think that there's time limitations with the council. And the council gives each candidate a time slot. So we program an hour, okay, for each person. Some of them will take a half hour, some will take 25 minutes, some might even take the entire hour. So what I would suggest, strongly suggest, is that no matter what, you take your, if you're going to do your interviews in here during your meeting, that you figure 45 minutes or 35 minutes for all of your interviews, all of them, and divide the number of questions by how much time you have for each person and get it done and do it all in at one time. So an interview process doesn't need to take 3 days or 4 days or an hour for each person, especially if there's 6 people who are applying. So I just use your imagination and flexibility and work through it, just as long as the council knows what questions you ask and how you scored it for each person.
Something that I would like to recommend is maybe a separate work group to come up with what those questions are going to be. So you guys can identify what things you're really looking for that. Because for instance, like you said, Jerry, we have all sorts of positions in Parks and Rec and we filter them based on what they are. Maybe come up with 4 questions and then go from there. Because I think anything more than that would probably be a lot more than you want to rate on, and also the time frame of what you want the interviews to look like. And so maybe a separate meeting that comes up with those questions or come back with some questions.
Getting back to what Brandon said and Lynn said, this is kind of contradictory to what I said. Brandon had no problem with the system. Dana, did you have a problem with the system that we used?
No, not at all.
And so getting back to you, Matt, so it looks like the system's not broken. was a three, actually they got picked, so obviously maybe they're happy with the way it turned out. They're not the one that didn't get picked. But if we continue using the same system we use now, can we still ask people different questions? If we continue with the system we do now, people shows up, they tell us why they want to be here, and then we start asking them questions.
Different ones? Different questions, did you say?
Oh, yeah, Doug, we ask them different questions.
You mean you ask one person a question and then the next candidate, you ask a different question?
Right, and some people will,
Absolutely not.
and some people will ask 6 or 7 questions too, and then some people will.
My HR head kind of goes insane when you talk about that.
And some people, we ask them different questions, and some people will ask 2 or 3 questions too, and some people will ask 6 or 7 questions.
City can be sued for that.
Yeah, that's a
I think-
huge liability.
I remember Carmen
For a
used to
whole
ask the
year?
same.
No, Carmen always asks the same
Yeah.
question.
So I
Yes.
feel like we
I just had-
typically ask
Yeah, I
the
just had one
same questions for people, but there's additional follow-up questions that sometimes get asked when someone answers, which I think is pretty standard
Yes.
in
Yeah,
an
you
interview.
can ask follow-up or clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I do see that we need so from what Matt said and Doug said. So we probably do need 4 or 5 questions that we ask everyone, and then we can ask follow-up questions to those questions if we want clarification on what they say. I see Jenny going aye on it.
Perfect, correct. And then if
Okay,
you,
so
So what?
I guess my motion, so we're gonna kind of go back and say, we're gonna have, I don't want to be on the subcommittee, but we're gonna have a subcommittee that is gonna come up with some questions, Shauna?
Yeah, so, well, my suggestion would be to think about what kind of questions you guys want to ask. Email them over to Aaron and myself. We can review them, see what things,
Can I have a mic?
are applicable, and then email them out to see what questions you guys want to ask. And as far as the interviews, if you're not doing them in a meeting and you want to have a subcommittee to do the interviews, that's something we talked about. But I do think it's good to do it in a public meeting because that's, we are in the public and such. And I think coming up with 4 to 5 questions that we ask, and I can see where Doug is saying, instead of just writing someone's name, who you picked, having a little bit of backing of why did you pick them with a rating system is a good plan. And I can email you guys back what we use as a rating system. And we could even simplify that down more to where it's not a big convoluted process, because we aren't hiring for positions, it's more of a volunteer base, but I can see having our I's dotted and our T's crossed and this kind of thing would be a good solution,
So I'm thinking, actually, I really like the questions that they ask because it covered, well, what do you want, why do you want to be on the commission? Was one of them. And then there was like 2 more. We really only had a couple. And then you could go into that a little bit deeper if you say, well, why do you want to do that?
so let's
And we
reach.
ask them what their experience,
Yeah.
And Carmen always asks them, which is their favorite part, and why, and what would you like to do? Put words in your mouth, Carmen. What would you like to do, different that's being done? I can see us coming up with those questions.
It's
And
gonna be
follow up.
pretty easy, actually, to keep those questions and
I think
maybe,
it's more so the part of selecting the candidates being a little bit more transparent than what currently is done with writing just one name down, maybe a reason why you pick that person or a rating system of why
Okay.
with the questions. that
and
you
then
guys
we
want.
would use that ranking.
Mhm.
So
Okay, I will-
counselors might want to watch this on in your meeting as well.
Yeah, I want to do away with the motion I made, and then when we get through talking, I'll make another motion.
Paul also had a comment. Paul, I think we could hear you, but there was just a lot of talking going on at the same
Okay.
time. There we
Yeah,
go.
the question I had was, we keep going around and around about this, but I heard what Matt was saying about we could ask different questions as long as it wasn't specific, like, he gave the example of like a park or whatever, what's your favorite park, or versus something that's specific. So why not just have a hybrid version of what we're all talking about and have the 4 specific written questions on the application. And then when the applicant comes in, we're not having to go through those questions. And then we can just ask subjective, non-specific questions, and they could vary depending on the individual or depending on their responses to the application. That sounds like a better way to me, but my 2 cents.
Well, my comment on that is, I personally like to hear the people say how they, I like to, have that face-to-face interface to see how they respond to that question. It could be on the interview and we could ask them the same question again, but I like to hear people say, what's their favorite park? Why are you on the commission? What's your, what do you have that you think will help the Parks Commission?
My biggest one always is, do you realize we meet at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and can you make the meetings easily?
Yeah, you always ask that question.
Yeah, that's a huge one that we need. If we have somebody, we need to have them be available when we are.
I always ask them that when I ask them if they're interested in coming to the meeting and interviewing.
Mhm.
I believe on the application, it also.
It doesn't say on the
Oh, okay.
application. The application is just a general application for all the boards and commissions. It's not specifically for this one.
So,
So I think this is something that we can work through with Aaron and I and with Lynn being the chair on work through it a little bit more. And so there's a little bit more guidance with it because we do need to ask the same questions to every applicant. It's not subjective to ask different questions.
and
And I think the questions that you've had in the past can be very applicable to what we ask in the future as well. So I think if we come up with 4 questions that we really want to know, I think that would be
More.
a good start.
Well, here's my 2 cents worth here. Is we don't do anything now. And we do what Shauna said, the people that want to submit questions to Shauna. At the next meeting, we can discuss those questions and see if there's some we want to eliminate or some that we want to add. And then we can add the rating system next time, because that's, so I just say we do nothing now except send questions to her.
I was thinking of something a little bit simpler. And I could send out an email with all the questions. I talked with Carmen, she's our past chair. And we have these standard 3 or 4 questions we've been asking, and they seem to be, I like them.
Yeah, I mean, we can take a look and see
And they're
like
really
some,
good,
yeah,
and then send them out,
that sounds good.
but I'm sure they're gonna be fine. But it's very simple, but it allows the person to elaborate if they want to.
We could come up with those 4 questions right now.
Easy.
Because we've already said them, I think.
So why don't we bring those questions, we'll be interviewing next month because it closes tomorrow.
Yeah, so we can email back and we can handle this through email, yeah.
So let's do that,
Well,
whoever wants to
can't we,
participate.
why don't we just right now say what our questions are? We're right here face to face. Why don't we need to we could add another step to it. But why doesn't Carmen, Howie knows what he always asks. Carmen has a couple questions. You have a couple questions. Why don't we just say those right now? And
I
that'll
think
take us
it would be
5 minutes.
good to go do it through email. That way if somebody has a problem with a question or doesn't like
Yeah,
it.
we can add to that,
Well, I'd like to ask,
I'm not an email type person. I'm not even a Zoom type person. I will do Zoom. I kind of like, my point is when you can do it now, face to face, why do we need to put it off till tomorrow or the next day or whatever?
I want to make sure everybody's involved in this, Paul, Brandon, anybody like Jacob who's not here right now. And make
agree
sure
with
they
that.
all have that input. And that's why I was suggesting the email. I think it's going to be very easy. And once we decide on that, then we'll send those over.
Well, what I think is that we should say the 4 or 5 questions that people have here now. They're not going to be written in stone. And then you put them on the email for people who can look at them and say, hey, I like this one a little different, or I'd like to add
Carmen,
this.
do you have the 4 or 5 questions that you guys ask normally?
I typically what I would do is ask them to give some background as to why they're interested in the commission and why they applied. And then I ask what their favorite park is and why. And then I let anybody else ask their standard question.
And what
Those are my two.
Yeah, and I would usually always ask them, you know, what past experiences do you have that you think would benefit the Parks Commission? And Howie always asks,
Oh, are you available?
are you available at 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
Now, we could send those 4 out if we wanted to, and then people could, you know, elaborate or say, hey, yeah, I think there's something else, you know, now that I thought about it, we could have a, you know, another question.
Okay, do you want to make a motion for that? And we'll get started on it. We'll have to go on to the rest of our agenda, I think. I fear.
Yeah, I don't think you have to.
Even staff knows what they're gonna do, they're gonna
Yes.
come back, it'll be ready at the next meeting,
Yeah.
so.
Exactly. So do you want to make that motion now?
Okay, did I make a motion that Shauna come back with a step?
We're gonna just send those questions that we
Oh, you
have.
want to send those?
And we don't have to do a motion.
We don't have to do a motion on that.
Yeah.
We don't need a motion.
Okay, great. All right.
So moved.
Everybody understand? Okay, great. We're going on to the
Sorry
next.
to
Yeah.
take my counselor's report and take it into a half hour or whatever it was.
So we've been breaking.
I'm still in my counselor's report.
That's fine.
So I got something to say, that I almost forgot about. But the budget meeting's coming up, and it's very important to, I think if you have any input for the upcoming budget, that you show up for visitor comments at the budget meeting. And Matt, when is that first budget meeting scheduled for, you know?
May 12th at 5 p.m.
I thought you said it was going to be March 28th.
Originally, yes, this year has been a little difficult in creating a balance.
So now the date is what?
May 12th,
And what time is that?
5 p.m.
And I want to mention something about that at the end of the meeting.
And at the last council meeting, we were talking about how the city is now strapped with funds. We're like Zippo zero to spend on what it looks like on parks for upcoming projects. I weighed in on saying, well, I understand that, but there is one project that we have got to have that won't cost very much in terms of capital outlay, and that's the urban trail. So if you agree, again, because we've said that to staff several times, if you agree to fund the urban trail and get that going this year, I'll agree to keep my mouth shut about any kind of capital improvements, big capital improvements in our parks that the city will have to budget. Of course, there'll be other kinds of inputs to monetary improvements, such as the Veterans Plaza. I know that there's veterans trying to raise money for that at this point. But anyway, that's the bad news. The good news is that you will have so much to do with the master plan, and make certain, I've just given you all a heads up, make certain that you know what each park is going to need in the next 10 years. So brainstorm, try to figure out the issues of which park is going to need what. And that's my last ditch effort on saying it's your input that's going to help with the master plan. And I'm really excited about the master plan coming up. So Matt, I'm going to ask Matt to talk a bit about the budget and what I just alluded to about the urban trail and some other types of issues with funding, to just give you a heads up. You can do that a little later, or you can do it right now in my counselor's report. I think you're on.
Okay with you. I was gonna speak during the RFP update on the agenda.
Good.
We can chat about it.
Okay,
Don't say
great.
that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is new business, property lines on Fifth Street Trail.
I asked for that to be put in there. We're up to at least 4 people along the Fifth Street right away that we have discrepancies in where the trail through there and where the property lines are. To me, it's getting a little bit difficult to know because you've got one property owner going, I own to here, and then that should be 80 feet. You'd be way up the hill over here. You got one where you got a fence through it. You've got, everybody's coming out differently. I was hoping that,
Jenny.
Jenny was here to talk about that, but she had a 5 o'clock
You guys
meeting.
went long, so.
So basically there, I'd like to table that till next month so that she could be.
And I know she's had many conversations with property owners and.
They're all
has-
friendly, but
Yeah, and has been out, and so at this point, we don't know what else we can do to inform with it. I mean, she's went out and physically talked to them, they came into the office, so she's just trying to understand what the next steps are.
yeah, the city needs to know what the next steps are. I mean, I really think there needs to be a little bit of a survey done in there.
Has it been staked out?
What's that?
Has it been staked out for the line?
No, there's a pin that they put in on what I would call coming out of Nob Hill on the 4th Street. There's a property pin there. And so it's like, if you just start looking, it's just like, oh, that person says they own to their fence. That angle would be so far different than where the property pin is that we've had set that there's no way to really know where they are. And I know that people are very nice. I don't want to say that they're all being completely nice, but I think we need to know where those lines are, and our neighbors in that area need to know where the lines are.
Or Shauna can speak with Jenny, and maybe a recommendation from the Parks Commission would be to actually have it surveyed and staked out. And there's markers of where the property lines are, so everyone's aware.
Because there's 4 of them along the Fifth Street row, and then we've kind of got 2 at the very end of 4th Street where one of them's a rental house. And that's when we moved the trail entrance because we had renters in there that started becoming abusive towards us, cutting across, and they're just renters. And now we've got another guy that's living there, and Jacob always said that the property line was like 8 to 10 feet off the side of that shelter. Well, there's a big white boat, and now they're parking a pickup truck beyond it on top of the canvas that's in that area. And so in that area, I'd love, since the rental house is an ongoing problem, I'd love to know more where that property line is so that a row of rocks could be put in there to really delineate it so that we know, rather than that. So somebody says something and, once again, the damage is being done to that area now. And if we wait another, how long do we wait? And then it gets rutted, and then what are we looking at? So that's why I really hope that would have been here.
Okay, Howard, so in the interest of time,
Yeah.
on the table, this to
Yeah,
continue.
yeah, if we can get
Okay,
more input on.
so the next item is Nob Hill Nature Park.
Okay. That once again is something, in the last 4 to 5 weeks, we've had 4 incursions by motorbikes into the park. We picked up almost 300 feet worth of burnouts here and there throughout the park on trails. They're driving up the sides of the railroad tie staircase and tearing up all that fragile ground. It's all sand. And there's no sign there that says anything about no motorized vehicles trying to come up there, which I think one of the first steps would be is, I'd say, another sign. I'm gonna talk to Emily and see if we can do some more planting in that area. But I'm thinking that there needs to be some type of more rocks added at the bottom. I realize we're talking 20, 30 feet, but 2-foot high rock wall along there, that would stop somebody from thinking they could just zoom up the side of the hill, and a few more. I mean, if the city doesn't have time, if they could bring some rocks, I'm sure. I hate to volunteer again. We could get some volunteers just to stack some things. Because they're starting to drive into the Camas Meadow and some of these other things. And if we wait till it's all torn up, then it's restoration, where by now we can save it before it needs restoration. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
Howard, can we incorporate that too, Nob Hill? updates, or maybe Shauna can get back with you on those.
Yeah.
When was the last occurrence that this happened? Has it been since the police were out there?
We haven't had anything in the last week and a half.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's really stopped. I don't know if they've actually caught up.
It's
with
really
anybody.
hard right now. I just want to say that we just got notified that one of our cars had its catalytic converter taken off at the community center. We have no vandalism signs at Campbell Park, and people vandalized right underneath it. So I see a need for signs, but definitely call it into non-emergency.
Oh, yeah.
Let us know when it's happened. They've been letting us know, and I haven't had a report for quite
Yeah,
about
it's been
2
about a
or 3
week and a
weeks.
half.
So it's been since we've talked.
Yeah, the one that tore up the sides of the trail.
Okay. Yeah, because I gotta, so just they come over to McCormick Park and ride down the trails there and stuff too. So just trying to see how we can stop doing this right now. So
Well, and that's it. We've got a huge area also. We're unsure of exactly whose property it is on the top rim edge of the sewage treatment plant, where it's an actual 4-wheel area. They have 4-wheel drives go into there and tear it all up right on top of the sewage treatment plant. Motorcycles, ATVs, and that's all in that general area. So it's really, we need to start trying to get more publicity out there that this type of behavior.
yeah.
If you don't own the property, you shouldn't be running an ATV on it.
And I am working with communications on putting out more messaging on what's allowed and not allowed in the parks. Signage is something that all the parks can benefit from, that we're going through each park and seeing. With the master plan stuff, that will be some things that are on there that aren't a 10-year goal, but some easy things that we can do in the meantime. But yeah, we do hear you, we do know. I get a copy of the police log when something happens at the parks, and it's been, so I don't know if you didn't call in the last one, because I know the last police report I got was probably about a month ago, maybe.
Yeah, I want to say last week, and I may have made it
Okay. Okay.
last week.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I don't know.
Another place for a sign also would be is for the Fifth Street right-of-way trail, the trail that runs along Tualatin between the National Guard Armory and whatever that other street is. There's nothing really in there, so people riding across there know it. Because we've actually had somebody burn out on the new footbridge, and we're right through the face of one of the boards, into the heart of the plastic.
It's hard, because I feel like the people who know they shouldn't be doing that are still doing it. Like, they know they shouldn't be doing that. So how do we make it stop? So yeah, let's.
Or increase penalties, you know.
So on to old business RFP update.
Yeah, John and I wanted to chat with you all about the latest RFP. So as most of you know, we went out for a second time because we weren't truly satisfied with the number of responses and the quality of the responses that we received the first time. So we revised the RFP, the council approved it, went out again. That session closed a little while ago, and the city received only one applicant. Staff did review and discuss that applicant. It was a company that had not done a full parks master plan ever, but had done pieces and parts of master plans. Staff was not comfortable bringing that forward as a recommendation as the only applicant. We did try and contact the previous 2 applicants that applied. They were not interested anymore in working and took other jobs and doing other projects. So we discussed as staff and would like to recommend to the Parks Commission that we do what's more considered of an internal update to the Parks Master Plan. And what I mean by that is there's an opportunity for some community engagement. And I was going to hand out a piece of paper of some potential dates with specific parks. And what staff is recommending is that you as commission members, as well as the community that will advertise to come to these meetings if they want to. And at each of those meetings, we will discuss 1 or 2 specific parks at that meeting, discussing what the needs are for over the next 10 years, what projects you want to see over there. And we can kind of rebuild the parks master plan list for projects that you want done over the next 5 to 10 years. And then we can amend the master plan to include the new park projects so that staff can start working on those. So I'll hand this out to you. And these are just suggested dates and parks. We definitely don't have to get into a huge discussion tonight over what parks are on what day or whatever like that. That can always be determined later. Staff is recommending 2 meetings per month, right after the Parks Commission meeting, and then a couple weeks later, so about 2 every other month or every other week. And like I said, we'll bring in maps and pictures and coloring things if you want. We can talk about what future plans you want at each park. I can email this to Shauna to make sure she can email it out to the folks on Zoom right now. And so you'll have an opportunity to look at that. We have the meetings starting right now in April. So April 11th and then the 25th, and 2 meetings after that, all the way through July to get through to every park.
What time of the day are we talking about?
We're probably thinking, because we want community engagement, might be 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, like after your Parks Commission meeting at 6 or something. That way people will have time to get home from work or 6:30, come up here. That would be up to you if you have a best recommendation of what time you think is best.
As long as you know how your councilman is going to weigh in on this on the council, is that I'm disappointed that we are not having a full-fledged professional consultant working on the master plan at this point. If we focus our scope of work to more 5 years than 10 years, then that opens it up to dealing with a master plan with a consultant in a very professional way, because those guys who do those individuals who do those master plans, that's what they do. And hopefully we'll have time to, this is kind of not a Band-Aid, but it's a way of keeping abreast with what we want to do with our parks in this 5-year plan rather than a 10 or 20-year out plan vision for our parks. So I embrace with the budgetary process and so many things going on in the city. I understand that. I understand it completely, and I embrace what the staff has come up with, say, hey, we've got really good people on our Parks Commission that are committed and have a passion for the parks. And I think our community, once we start to engage the community in this process, I think it will come out with a good outcome. So just know that that's the way I'm going to weigh in my disappointment not having a professional come in and do a $75,000 master plan, usually 75 to 100,000.
Yeah, it ended up, I think the previous responses of the one we got was around 125.
125, so they are expensive and they are very professional. And so we put that off for a while. That's my way of thinking of what's happening.
Really appreciate that, Doug. I think from my frame of mind, it's the same thing where it's not a 10-year, it's more of a 5-year type of thing, building on the master plan that Jenny had done with some newer stuff, but something that we can accomplish with the next few years and how we're going to get funding and such. I think part of the restraints of getting a lot of applications, I think a lot of people are updating things, especially with all the ARPA funds that came in, so they just don't have capacity to create new master plans. We have several going on here at the city too. And so we thought if we took a little bit of a step back, but still move forward on things, that it would be better than not doing it right now. And then also having the people who are the boots on the ground, people who are doing the work in the parks, having a really big part of this process. So when we do a master plan in the next 5 years or so, we really understand what that process looks like and what we want to see for that. But I think there's a lot of opportunities in our current parks right now that would be easily identifiable, so we can start doing that. And if we somehow get some more money for a master plan, or we can definitely look into seeing what that looks like. But
and I think also, Shauna, I think another point is that we have a darn good master plan in place now. It just doesn't vision out like it could. And I think that that's the missing component. And so if we can work through that, and I would suggest everyone get a hard copy that you get a hard copy of the master plan in front of you. And so you can review it in the evening times or whatever and know where you're going to go with that. It's pretty involved. I think for the most part that the existing master plan we can go on with. And so I do agree with what we're doing. But
yeah, I know we were super excited about going and getting a new one as well, but just I think the timing right now and everything with the waterfront and all the focus on community engagement, that this will be a good fit for our community right now.
So I do want to mention that we do have the list that you guys have had on your commission file for a while about what projects you want in specific parks. So Sean and I are working to put that list together along with what's currently in the master plan, what's currently been done already in the master plan, as well as talking with staff to see what improvements and recommendations they have as well. So we will have some pre-built lists to start out with and start those discussion points. One thing I also wanted to mention, Doug discussed the urban trail, and that is definitely on our list. I'm in the middle of trying to set up a meeting between Shauna and the planning department and public works as well, so that we can all sit around the table, discuss the urban trail and put a game plan together that we can come back to the council with of here's what we can do, here's how we do it, here's how much we think it's going to cost. And then that will allow us to look for grants as well as some other funding opportunities.
So Matt, Carmen and Howard and myself, Howard and myself, we work as a subcommittee on that. So when you have that, it'd be nice if we could be part of that. And I know Dana works downtown, and I believe she told me she'd like to be involved in that also.
there's one component to that, Jerry, that we haven't really talked about in depth, and that's the handicap portion of that, of how we can shorten that course or that trail to involve handicap. And that's very possible the way it's laid out, that they just don't have to climb hills and downstairs and that kind of thing. It's very possible that the handicap alternatives could be in place on that as well. So if we're gonna do it right.
Yeah, we've discussed that,
I think there's sections that can be
there's,
and sections that can't
all the
be.
way from the cliff.
Yeah.
All the way from the cliff, all the way down to Nob Hill Park, that can all, and maybe even part of Nob Hill Park, they could be handicap accessible, especially if some of that was, I don't know if Howard would want, an asphalt trail that went up to maybe a viewpoint or something, or this, I know it's not your park, if the city wanted an asphalt trail to go up to there, but I think that should, we've talked about that, and I think that could definitely be part of the trail, but I don't think it can be used for the whole thing, because I don't see how people can get up the cliff trail there.
And Jerry, we will definitely engage with you guys once we kind of get our footing straight. I think initially we would like to just meet as staff, go through the plan and discuss it internally first to really see what barriers and issues planning may have or public works may have. And then once we're all on the same page and get kind of a roadmap of where we might go, then we'd love to invite you in and kind of engage with you and talk about how we're going to do things.
And just so you know, if you guys were willing to get stencils or something, I'm sure some of us would help paint the directions on there. The committee that we would.
Yeah, you guys have already kind of
Our
put
time.
together a great floor plan of what it's going to be and where it's going to go. And I think we just have to discuss internally as far as specifically in public works and planning of how we can go about it the right way.
Yeah, I think, Matt, one of the things I've always, and Doug's brought this up too, that, there needs to be a budget so we know, how much this is going to cost, because if Shauna's still looking for money, I don't like, for grants and things, it's nice to say, yeah, we could use this money to maybe put a barrier up above the cliff or.
I think Mohammed's already all over that. And so that's in his ballpark. It isn't up to this commission to figure out how we're going to budget and all of that. So he already knows what needs to happen. He's walked it and he already knows how much sidewalk, how much railing, how much this, how much that. And now the council will be directing him to get that done. And that's going to be his deal, not so much the parks. Parks will be helping out with manpower, but for the most part, it's going to be because it's on public right of way and not in a park so much. It does encompass 6 parks, but a lot of it will be out in public right. So that falls in the jurisdiction of Public Works. And interesting enough, the mayor and myself are overseeing parks and public works. So it's a good fix at this point. Only one other point for the master plan. Make certain that we know and vision where the new parks are going to be and who are they going to serve and how are they going to serve. There are new parks on the minds of our staff. And so that's very important for us to get involved in kind of any new talks about parks that we don't have at this point that we will be building in the future. And what are they? So those potentials, I think, need to be explored when we do our master plan. That's it for me.
Any other questions, Brandon, Paul, Carmen?
Just wondering when that list of dates and times and parks is going to be finalized. When you need feedback.
Where's the camera? Can we?
I know it's there, but I heard that it was draft, so just wondering when it needs to be
I will give it to
finalized.
Shauna tonight, and then she will work on getting it out to you as all members the next day or so.
Is she talking about a sheet of paper?
And
I
yeah,
drop one off at your house on the way home.
it's okay. Email is fine too. I am wondering when you want feedback by, Matt, or
Anytime
is this the final list?
we would like to say that this is the final list. If there are
Okay.
big changes or things that, dates for sure that nobody can make it or whatever. If there's large changes, go ahead and email them to Shauna.
Okay.
And we can.
And she'll deal with it.
So what we did, just so that you know, is we set it to where one of the workshops would be after our Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. And then the other one would be 2 Mondays later, trying to help not having to do so many meetings. And since it's all on our brains still, we could just go right into the commission meeting. And who knows, maybe bring more citizens in to engage in the commission meetings.
So the 11th is when we're having our
Sounds good.
next.
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
And then I had one other just comment. One, I'm bummed that we don't get to have someone come in and have like an outside perspective come in with the expertise, but know that the staff will do a good job in place of that. And I'm wondering if, because we just had a lot of community feedback sessions with the waterfront redevelopment, if some of that content can be evaluated as well to see maybe what feedback we received that was around the waterfront, but not necessarily going to be implemented at the waterfront. So something that the community would like to see in our parks that we could consider for other parks.
Yeah, I'm sure that information, is readily available, and we can have that pulled for you so you can review it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And I also can pull the survey that we had for the parks stuff, so we can have that available to us too.
Awesome. Yeah, I think maybe the last 2 years of survey results and just kind of free text feedback that we've gotten related to parks would be helpful too. I'm happy to parse through some of that.
Carmen, are you talking specifically about the huge expansion of Columbia View Park?
That's one of the pieces, yeah, because there were a lot of community sessions there. And so, typically people bring up things that maybe can't be handled in the current plans there, but it shows that they have interest in it. And so I think bringing that forward and thinking about that big picture and our whole park system would be valuable.
My only question, who do you anticipate leading these meetings?
It'll be Matt and myself. And then if we need to bring in any other staff members or council members, we'll do that.
Yeah, the master plan is definitely something we still have on our radar. It's just something that maybe we might wait a year or so before actually bringing somebody in. And this is a good stopgap process so that we can continue looking for funding.
And there might be pieces of it as well as we get into it that we feel like would be better contracted out, or we might stumble upon funding to contract those pieces out as well. So this isn't just, this is how it's going to be. It's something that we can start moving forward with the tools that we have, and then still look for other opportunities to make it better.
Brandon, thank you for asking that question. I think we do need council representation at those meetings.
So next, if there's nothing else, next item is discussion items, and I actually have one that'll follow through to the April meeting. It's park assignments update. And right now, the last time I got a park or saw a park update was in September. And I've got a handout, and for the rest of you that is on Zoom, I will send that out to you. And if next month, I'd like somebody to volunteer to update us on their park or parks. And so you can tell me now, or you send me an email, but we're gonna have one in April. And also Dana does not oversee any of the parks yet. So I'd like to suggest that if somebody has 2 parks and they would like to change that out with Dana, if she's interested. We have, looks like 2 openings that Alyssa had and John. So one of them is the dog parks, and the other is Campbell. And he also had Columbia View, but obviously that's going to be worked on. So we're going to wait on that one. So any comments on that?
Yeah, I'd like to keep the botanical gardens.
Okay.
And if someone new would like to take Great Cliffs, I would be definitely willing to give that up.
Maybe we can settle that now. Dina, are you interested?
So out of the park availabilities, which ones are available right now total?
Okay, it's Campbell and the dog parks. Dog parks is what Alyssa had. And then Campbell is what John had.
All right, and because I'm new to this, could you please explain to me what my roles and responsibilities would be regarding this?
Well, and anybody jump in if they want to, but you oversee these parks to make sure that their trails are in good order, that any signs you might have not been defaced, that you have the right kind of signs up in your park, that you will have cleanups in the area as needed, and give that information back to the commission if there's any problems. If you would like to add to the park, those will be addressed to the commission. So is there anything else that somebody wants to add to this?
I would suggest looking through the master plan to see what is suggested in the master plan and follow that as a guideline, and any other kinds of avenues that you see could be added to that in addition to what's in the master plan.
Agreed on the master plan piece, and then also just kind of being an advocate for the park. It doesn't mean that you're in charge of maintaining it or doing all the things for it. It's just you're kind of the eyes and ears for the commission of that park, and just advocating.
And then I would just like to add that any problems that you see in the park, please include me on those right away. If it's something that needs to be fixed right away, so that we're not waiting till the next commission meeting. But if there's yeah, just include me on those discussions, because we do check the parks every day, but of course, things come up that we might not see, so.
And you did hear Jerry say that grade class, he would be willing to give that up too. So that would be open. So you don't have to decide now, just read more about them and.
Yeah, I'd like to do a little bit more diving into each of the parks individually. So if it's okay, I would love to spend the next month visiting each one of these ones and kind of assessing them individually before I state which one I'd love to claim. And I'd also like to hear a little bit more about the issues and whatnot that are happening at Campbell Park, because I was really intrigued regarding the volume of vandalism and et cetera. So
sounds like a good idea, Dina. All right, if there's nothing else. Oh, Jerry?
I have one thing to add.
Paul, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just something that I noted, and I wanted to first say the first half of my statement is that I appreciate the improved sidewalks along Gable Road and North Vernonia Road. It's certainly a nice addition to our community. One of the things that and I'm sure it's probably always a problem, one of the things that I've noticed, because these are newer sidewalks that have been put in, is that there's a lot of residents that I'm sure they know, but they're parking their vehicles on the sidewalk. And so I'm sure the city, is always having to deal with that issue, but it was just something that I noticed and just thought I would bring it up. It's more than one residence that is parking their vehicles right on the sidewalk. So anyways, just wanted to bring that up, so.
Thanks, Paul. Jerry?
So Doug brought up a thing about, new parks. And one thing I brought up 4 or 5 years ago, and I haven't brought it up again, is one thing, this is a long way down this, we're not talking next year, but I just, so people that are here know that, is what I would call a triangle park. It would be on Old Portland Road, where I think it's Plymouth and 12th Street come together. There's just a triangle there that's just totally level. There's nothing there. But the reason my initial thinking is here, eventually that's where Plymouth Road goes down to the riverfront. So that's eventually, might be 10 years from now, it might be 5 years from now, that's going to be a major intersection. So what I would say is, let's have a park there that's low maintenance, maybe with something like, columnar basalt rock or something like that. And, signs that says, courthouse, etc. This direction down Old Portland Road, and then down Plymouth Road, it says, down to the waterfront. But I can see that as being kind of an entryway for, other than Columbia Boulevard, is an entryway to downtown, St. Helens.
Jerry, there's a roundabout there.
There's a
It's
roundabout.
going to be, city purchased that an apartment house there. And
I was involved in
it's
that.
all going to be one big roundabout.
But that roundabout is going to be, I don't think that roundabout is going to be where that triangle is. I think where that house is, so Old Portland Road goes this way, Plymouth Road goes this way, and there's the big triangle where the city purchased that house right there. And my understanding is that's where the roundabout is going to be. It's going to be past that triangle. Could be wrong on that.
There'll be exits and entrances from that roundabout that might interfere into where you're thinking. That was my point. It's going to be a big roundabout. And you're absolutely correct. It is going to be an entryway to our city. There'll be another roundabout where the safety building is on 18th for McCormick and the
18th and Old Portland Road.
yes. Is that 18th? Yeah, where McCormick Park is and the rec center, all that. So, and out from the new police station, the new safety building. So it's all planned. It's there. It's kind of ready to go. There could be, like you're talking about, some kind of aesthetic issues in the middle of those roundabouts. There has to be also line of sights that kind of like they have standards for line of sights as they're going around the roundabouts. It's supposed to be very big so that big trucks can go around that thing as well as automobiles. That's why it's designed. So
if it's that big, I could see that it could take up part of that triangle.
yeah. So anyway, I mean, it's that's a good idea for something aesthetic and your welcoming signs and directional designs. At that point, they'll have to be there without a doubt. Good point.
Okay, finally, does anybody want to volunteer right now to give the update on their park in April? Okay.
Okay, I'll do the I gotta do it sometime.
Yeah.
I'll do the botanical garden.
Great, thank you. Great.
Just the botanical garden this time.
Okay.
And I can do May, Lynn. I just can't commit to doing April.
Okay, great. Thanks, Carmen.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion?
Yeah. 3 things, and I've got to go over them really fast because I got to get out of here. I was very amazed to walk by, I believe it's at Civic Pride Park, and not see one sign mentioning that it's a City of St. Helens or City of St. Helens Park, the one next door to Red Apple and stuff. It was totally unmarked in any way, shape, or form to let people know that that's actually a city-owned park there. So I'd like to see if there's a way to eventually get signage to say that that's a park there. I'm also curious, I believe last year we started coming up again, whatever happened to our parks maps. We had some brochures we had printed that we gave away about 3-4 years ago. If we can get more of those or not, whatever happened to both of those. Also, April the 2nd, we have our 2 semi-annual work parties at Nob Hill, 1 in the morning from 9 till noon. That's going to work along the 5th Street right away. And then afternoon work party that's going to be working in Nob Hill proper between 1 and 4. And then also on that following Sunday, the 3rd, there's a plant walk with the Native Plant Society of Oregon from 1 till 3.
Anything else?
Good recommendations, Howie. I really like the idea about kiosks, a kiosk in every park with those maps of all the parks being displayed at the kiosks.
And one other thing I forgot to say was that we've actually applied for a small grant from the Portland Garden Club for $600. So we'll see if we get that or not.
That's order. Anything else? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.